Hi and welcome back to NTRAS. In today's video we're going to talk a little bit about the CCNA certification and training programs available through learningnetwork.cisco.com. If you're interested in learning more about the Cisco certifications, learningnetwork.cisco.com. You start out at the home You'll start out on the home page, but if you go into certifications under associate, you're going to see that there are a lot of certifications listed here. Now all of these certifications are actually going to be replaced by the new CCNA that comes out on February 24th. Coming over here and clicking on Overview will get us to this CCNA page. If you scroll down, you'll see where it shows the new CCNA certification replaces all of the old cloud, collaboration, data center, industrial, routing and switching, security, service provider, and wireless certifications, as well as the design associate, the CCDA. Now, the thing about the CCNA is you don't have any formal prerequisites for this certification, but they do say you should have a good understanding of the exam topics before taking this exam. Scrolling back up here, you'll see where we can access the exam topics. We'll get to that in just a moment here. The recertification for the CCNA is 3 years. So if you want more information about recertifying, you can access the recertification page and see what their policy is. All certifications will have a 3-year recertification deadline. The continuing education program will extend to the CCNA Specialist, CCNP, and CCIE certifications. So if you don't want to retake exams or take new ones, you can always look at the continuing education program. The continuing education point cap for Cisco Live activities and content authoring, such as written exam items, has been removed. So we have to meet their specific program requirements. You'll see here down at the bottom, it'll talk about recertification requirements that will be implemented on February 24th, 2020. And as you see here, everything is 3 years except for the architect, which is 5. So depending on where you're going to go with your career and your certifications, you can see associate level. You can pass any associate exam or professional exam, pass a technology core exam, or even pass the CCIE lab. So you can't pass the written anymore to recertify, it looks. For continuing education on the CCNA, it is 30 credits. The specialist requires professional or above and is 40 credits. And for the professional recertification, you must pass a technology core exam, pass 2 professional concentration exams, or the CCIE lab to include 80 CEs. Or you can pass 1 professional concentration and earn 40 CEs. Now, one of the things about the new CCNP levels is it is a core exam and a concentration now, and not a listing of multiple exams to get to that CCNP. But let's digress back down to the CCNA. We'll look at here and see our CCNA exam topics for the Cisco Certified Network Associate 200-301. Now, once again, keep in mind that there are a lot of certifications that this is going to be replacing. So when we get into the topics here, they're going to be quite extensive. The CCNA version 2 exam is a 120-minute exam, and it tests the candidate's knowledge and skills related to network fundamentals, network access, IP connectivity, IP services, security fundamentals, as well as the new automation and programmability. If we come down here and look at these topics, you'll see that our network fundamentals deals a lot with our OSI layers and our network topologies. So we have routers, switches, firewalls, wireless access points, controllers such as DNA Center, wireless LAN controller, endpoints and servers, the topology of 2-tier, 3-tier, spine leaf, WAN, etc. But it also goes into physical interface and cabling types as well. So you're going to have to understand the different types of fiber and the various concepts of connections and power over Ethernet. Moving on, we'll also need to be aware of things such as collisions, errors, duplexes, and speeds. We're going to compare TCP to UDP, which is layer 4. Configure and verify IP addressing and subnetting for IP version 4, which is layer 3. Why do we need this, of course? And then you also need to know all of the features of IP version 6. Of course, Cisco has also included here some of the IP parameters for client operating systems, because as you may know, Cisco has gotten into the compute and server realm. Along with other physical network mediums, we also have to understand wireless principles now. Once again, the CCNA wireless has been included in the new CCNA. And lastly, we also have to learn about switching concepts and the virtualization fundamentals. For network access, this deals a lot with the layer 2, layer 3, and wireless sections, where we talk about VLANs that span multiple switches, inter-switch connectivity to include trunking those particular VLANs. You also have to be aware of the layer 2 discovery protocols, CDP and LLDP. You have to configure and verify layer 2 and layer 3 Ether channel for LACP. It might exist elsewhere, but you'll have to note that a lot of these topics may have specifics, in this case LACP and not PAGP or just Ether channel on. We need to describe the need and basic operations of Rapid per VLAN spanning tree plus and identify its basic operations to include the root ports, root bridges, primary, secondary, and other port names, port states, and the port fast benefits to spanning tree. You have to compare the wireless architecture and AP modes, describe the physical infrastructure connections of a wireless LAN, such as access points, wireless LAN controllers, access and trunk ports, as well as lag link aggregation. You'll need to describe access points and wireless LAN management access connections, such as Telnet, SSH, HTTP, HTTPS, console, as well as TACX Plus and Radius. We'll then configure the components of a wireless LAN access for client connectivity using the wireless LAN controller or access point GUI, its security settings, QoS profiles, and advanced wireless LAN settings. Moving on to IP connectivity, you'll see that this is mostly layer 3. You need to interpret the components of a routing table to include the codes, prefixes, and masks, next hops, administrative distances, metrics, and what a gateway of last resort is. You must determine how a router makes a forwarding decision by default, and you need to know of the longest match, administrative distance, and the routing protocol metric. We then have to configure and verify IP version 4 and IP version 6 static routing, as well as OSPF version 2. So you'll notice here it does not mention RIP, it does not mention ERGRP, ISIS, or BGP. So these various components of static routing and OSPF are going to be essential. Default routes, network routes, host routes, floating static routes, neighbor adjacencies, point-to-point routing, broadcast with designated router and backup designated router selection, router ID, and of course, describe the purpose of first hop redundancy, such as HSRP, VRRP, and GLBP. Next, we look at IP services, such as using NAT, static, and pools. Configure and verify NTP operations in client and server modes. You need to explain the role of DHCP and DNS within a network. Explain the function of SNMP in network operations. Describe the use of syslog features, including facility and its levels. You need to be able to configure and verify a DHCP client and relay. Explain the forwarding per hop behavior for QoS, classification, marking, queuing, congestion, policing, and shaping. You then need to configure network devices for remote access using SSH. We then have to describe the capabilities and functions of TFTP and FTP in a network. We then have to go on to security fundamentals, to define key security concepts such as threats, vulnerabilities, exploits, and mitigation techniques of these items. You need to describe security program elements such as user awareness, training, and physical access control. We must configure device access control using local passwords, as well as describing security password policy elements such as management, complexity, and password alternatives such as multi-factor authentication, certificates, and biometrics. We also need to be able to describe remote access and site-to-site VPNs. We will then configure and verify access control lists, configure Layer 2 security features such as DHCP snooping, dynamic ARP inspection, and port security. We then need to differentiate between AAA, the authentication, authorization, and accounting concepts that make up authentication and authorization of users. We then have to describe wireless security protocols such as WPA, WPA2, and WPA3. And then we'll look at configuring a wireless LAN using WPA2 pre-shared key using the GUI. And lastly, we have our new topics, the automation and programmability. We have to explain how automation impacts our network management and compare traditional networks with the controller-based networking. For the controller-based networking and software-defined architectures, we need to understand the overlays and underlays as well as the fabric so we can provide the separation of control plane and data plane. We'll then have to understand the northbound and southbound APIs as well. We will compare the traditional campus device management with Cisco's DNA Center-enabled device management. You need to describe the characteristics of REST-based APIs using CRUD, HTTP verbs, and data encoding. We need to recognize the capabilities of configuration management mechanisms Puppet, Chef, and Ansible. And lastly, we need to interpret JSON encoded data to make all this automation and programmability come together. Now looking at this certification page, we also have IT training videos, webinars, Cisco Certifications podcast, and study groups. So if you want to do your learning through Cisco, you can click here on the Start Learning option. You can listen to the updates for the Cisco certification using podcasts, and if you want to join a CCNA study group where you can ask questions, share ideas, and connect with peers. Now keep in mind here on Entraz, if we can gain a decent following, all the people that might be included in the YouTube channel, you can always ask questions and hopefully get good responses. For the quick links, you'll see here we have the Learning Network Store, Learning Locator, on-demand e-learning, the tracking system for your certifications, as well as the certifications online support. Back up top here, we can check out the study materials that Cisco recommends, and you're going to notice there are quite a few of them. Yeah, that's quite a bit. If you're getting into networking and want to become a professional, this page is a good idea to visit because you'll get a nice understanding of all the various parts and pieces of Cisco networking. And lastly, of course, we have practice. You can use the following review questions taking from the CCNA curriculum. Keep in mind it does say current, and the current CCNA will not be available until February 24th, so do not reflect the actual questions you receive on the live certification exam, and this should help you move forward. The CCNA videos we're going to be coming out with on Entraz are going to be following these exam topics, and hopefully they can help you on your journey through the CCNA February 24th, 2020. So we'll see you in the next video where we talk about network fundamentals.